Two things in particular are very, very hard to maintain when you have a mental illness. The first is your parenting duties, being a parent, being a father, being a mother. The second is being a partner, a wife, a husband. Today, I'm going to share my tips, four of them, about how a person with mental illness can sustain a marriage, even though they're living with mental illness. All that and more coming today on STP. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's go.
Welcome to Shattered the Podcast,
sharing the lived experience of mental illness on
A father,
a mother.
a family.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I think anyone that's heard me speak in public, on the podcast, on marriage with mental illness, is my absolute undying and completely inadequate gratitude to my wife for her help, her support, and everything to do with living with a mental illness. My illness has made her life infinitely harder in so many different ways, not least of which is the fact that I don't have capacity to be the husband I was before I got hurt. I had a wonderful conversation with just a brilliant lady at a school that we'd gone to speak at, and I heard her talk, and she's lived with mental illness for a long time. Going to try and get her on the program because I was just so impressed with her. But she said something about her marriage. They've been married 36 years. She's been mentally ill the whole time they've been married, got help very late in the piece, very, very well into their marriage. And she apologized to her husband. And the husband said something which I almost broke down in tears on hearing it. He said, "It's okay. It's not your fault. It is hard. It is tough. But it's not like you've done this by choice." I'm learning to understand that the attitude of this man and the attitude of my wife are extraordinary. How many partners are going to stick around in a situation where one of them suddenly develops severe mental illness symptoms? Who's going to stick around in that? It's almost impossible to find. I did a broad, vox pop. I just asked the people around me just a very informal poll about the people that I work with and know in the mental illness world who are successfully married, not divorced, separated. And there was like 3 out of 10 of us are still married to the same person. So that should give you an understanding. And again, that was a very informal poll. I don't know if the number's more or less. I just don't know, but I assume that the number is correct. But the responsibility for a marriage does not end because you have a mental illness, because you have diminished capacity. Your responsibility is not voided or invalidated because of your illness. Today, I'm going to give you my 4 strategies, or 4 of the strategies that I have had to use. And I guess if you're going to give them a title, it would be communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Soon as you stop communicating, you're done. Your marriage is going to fail. If you're not communicating, and I'm not talking about living in the same house. I'm talking about communicating at a level that you understand where the other person is coming from. In another video, I'm going to give you my tips for just a successful marriage, just in general, because I did this for somebody the other day and they were kind of blown away. But what do you do when you're married and you've got a mental illness? How do you maintain that communication? How do you live up to your responsibilities as much as you can? And first and foremost, before I go into the list, is the understanding that you can only do what you can do. Don't expect to be able to do more than you are able to do. So it does require a certain understanding on your part. I know that for at least the first 6 to 12 months that I came home with a mental illness, I was checked out of my marriage. I didn't think I was, but when I listened to the stories my wife tells, I was a non-entity. I was not present. And she said something to me at one stage which blew my mind. We were living in Sydney and we found out that we were having our second child. And my wife said, "I can't be a single parent again. I need to move closer to my family." That was a bit of a wake up call for me. In fact, it was a lot of a wake up call. I figured that I was there. In my head, I was completely involved in our marriage and our children's lives. But she felt like a single parent, even though I was there. So, my 4 tips to you, the person with mental illness, to have a successful marriage, to keep a marriage, to go into a marriage. First and foremost is be accountable. You have to understand that while some of your behaviors are out of your control, a lot of them are in your control. And that there's going to be people listening that are going to go, "Mike, you don't understand." Problem is, I do understand. And I'm speaking from experience, experience as an educator, experience as a trainer, and experience as a person with a disability, with a mental illness. Accountability. Be accountable for your actions, be accountable for what you do and what you haven't done. It's tough. You got to look hard at yourself. You got to ask horrible, horrible questions, and you've got to hear some horrible answers from your partner, your spouse. Because if you aren't accountable, if you continually say, "It was my mental illness's fault, I had nothing to do with it," that is not a sustainable model of living with someone. If I lose my temper and become angry, it'd be very easy to go, "Oh, mental illness. I don't have a fight or flight response. I responded poorly. You were nagging me." I have to be accountable for the parts of me that allowed that to happen. Was I getting frustrated? Was I in a situation where I was trying to do something that I shouldn't? Should I have watched for cues? Should I have listened to advice that was given to me in that moment that I ignored? Accountability is tough because I know it doesn't feel fair that you're going through this. I know that it is not fair. And I know that at times your behaviors feel like they are out of control. Because nobody wants to be mentally ill. Nobody wants to be suffering the symptoms of mental illness. They don't want to be a bad spouse, partner, wife, husband. They didn't choose it. You didn't choose it. But you can't just put everything in this basket of saying it was mental illness's fault. Got to take accountability. I got PTSD from a critical incident. Very, very easy for me to say I am mentally ill because of that incident. But in the weeks and months leading up to that, I was burnt out. And the final assault was the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't the be all and end all. Like I was perfect up until the incident happened. And I should have been more accountable to myself for that, to say I need to make a significant change to enable me to stay mentally healthy. And I didn't. I have to take accountability for that. Second one. Oh, this one's a toughie. Be honest. Being honest with yourself can be devastating. Looking at your behavior, the comment that my wife said, I don't want to be a single parent anymore. I had to be honest with myself and say, okay, what does my behavior look like? What has my behavior actually been? And you have to give your partner the opportunity to be honest as well. Because if they can't tell you how you're affecting them because of the consequence of telling you, then there is no honesty. And you're going to be living a perpetual lie. And once again, your relationship is going to be out the window. So my first one again, be accountable. My second one, be honest. My third one, take responsibility. Take responsibility. Be prepared to say sorry a lot. When you take responsibility for something, I watched a show on the Unabomber. What's that got to do with mental illness? Absolutely nothing. He was a psycho. He was sure there might have been mental health issues, but it's beside the point. It's off topic. When he pleaded guilty to his actions, the judge in the case, very, very interesting, said some things which blew me away. In pleading guilty, the judge said, you are agreeing that all blame for your actions should be assigned to you. Unabomber had to say, yeah. Then the judge said, by entering this plea, do you understand? And then he listed the consequences. He was never going to be able to appeal. He gave up his right to appeal. He accepted the fact that he was going to prison forever. What has this got to do with what I'm talking about? It's extreme, but it makes the point I'm trying to say. When you take responsibility, you take the blame for what you've done, you accept the behavior as your own. You cannot blame somebody else. You accept responsibility for what you did, and you accept the consequences. And more than that, if you truly take responsibility for something, you will endeavor to not do it again. Taking responsibility is not a one-off option that we said sorry, so you've got to move on. It's like, no, I took responsibility. I understand that there are consequences. There are consequences that I have to live with today. And that's what you've got to do in your relationship. I lost my temper. I made you feel threatened. That is on me. That was not your fault. I accept that. I I take responsibility, and I take the steps to make sure that it doesn't happen again. That's what taking responsibility is. Understanding the consequences, understanding that you will pay a price, and understanding that you are willing to bear that price. For me, it came from the fact that I knew I was going to have to expend a lot of energy after my wife told me that she felt like a single parent. I had to do better. I had to work that much harder to be on the ball, to be sure that I was doing the things I needed to do. So my 4 things so far: be accountable, be honest, ugh, take responsibility. And the last one, try to do better. It's one thing to make a mistake and try and make reparations for that mistake. I mean, that's a good thing to do. But better than that is to not make the mistake in the first place. My wife felt like a single parent. I asked her about the things that I did before I was mentally ill to after. Now, there were certain things that I was never good at. Managing our finances. It drives me spare. I can't do it. And we realized that very early on in our relationship that Mary has capacity for that. So she deals with it, paying bills, that sort of stuff. I'm involved and I know what bills we need to pay, but the minutia of dealing with it needs to be with her. We both cook. I'm probably better at spot cleaning. Does that make sense? I will tidy a house and then Mare will tidy a house. The house will look better once she's done. But if you need a bathroom cleaned, I'm the guy. I can just clean a bathroom. Was one of my many jobs. was being a cleaner for a little while. So what that's got to do with trying to do better is I had to force myself to do more around the home, ensuring that dinner was cooked, ensuring that the babies were clean and ready when mum came home, ensuring that the washing was done. And these were hard things to do. These were hard. You got to imagine, I use this comparison a lot at the moment, but you're running a marathon in your mind. You're running constantly. You're trying to do better. You're exhausting yourself. And then somebody comes up to you and says, I need you to cook dinner for me. It's like coming up to that runner and saying, you are now in a 100-meter race. So just for 100 meters, I need you to sprint as hard as you can, as fast as you can, for as long as you can. The person in the marathon can't see the point. They're so consumed with their own journey that they look at this little request as if it's a 100-meter dash in the middle of a marathon. I had to do it. I had to do the 100-meter dash in the middle of the marathon. But this is where being honest came in, because we were able to learn that I've only got a certain number of good, productive hours in me every day. I get to a point where I'm just too tired. My mind is just fully exhausted. And to attempt to do one of these jobs, one of these tasks, one of these, trying to be present at these times where I'm wrecked. It is better for me to take care of my mental health than try and push through. And of course, there were times where I was asked to do something and I didn't do it because I forgot or I was lazy or that sort of thing. But there's a very big difference to a time when you're in crisis, when you are at a point of danger to yourself or others, that you just have to say, I can't do it. But your partner has to know that you want to be better. If they don't believe that, they don't believe that you are doing your absolute best to try to get better, how can they possibly trust you? How can they possibly look at what you're doing and be compassionate if they don't believe that you are willing to care enough to try and love them better? Why would somebody in that situation stick around? A marriage, a relationship, a partnership can be strained by mental illness, but you can make it through. The four things that I've mentioned: accountability, be accountable, be honest, take responsibility, try to do better, are not easy things to do, especially for a person with mental illness. You're so consumed with your own pain that it can be impossible to look outside that pain and think that somebody else is struggling. Think of it like this. Somebody said to me the other day that they heard depression described as a warm blanket that comes and rests on them. That is not depression for me. Depression for me is being stuck in a well that's cone shaped. It gets shallower, it gets smaller and smaller the further down you go. I'm highly claustrophobic. That's depression for me. Stuck in a well, so consumed with my fear that I can barely look at the top of the well. Sometimes I can. If I hear your voice while I'm down in my pit of despair, I don't know that you're in a hole. I just assume that you're not in a hole because I can hear you. It's not that I don't want to hear. It's not that I can't. It's just that I can be so consumed with my own situation and the limitations of my situation that I can't fathom that somebody outside of me is suffering as well. And again, it's a great analogy. If you're stuck in a well, you don't assume that anybody else is being affected by that. You don't assume that anybody else is sharing your pain. Sure, they want you out of it, but they don't know. We don't know that they are suffering as well because they can't see. They're stuck. They're surrounded by their own pain. They can barely stay alive, stay conscious, stay focused, stay involved, let alone consider that somebody else might be struggling as well. It's never going to be easy. But as a person with mental illness, I need to understand that my wife is going through stuff as well. She is not sitting at the top of the well having a picnic on the grass. She's doing her utmost to get to me, to help me out of my well, to help me out of my hole. The least I can do is try to reach her, is to communicate back to her. It's to say I'm here, and I'm trying. Somebody's stuck in a well and they're not saying anything. They're like, oh, I like the well. It's nice here. Why would they go through the pain of trying to get you out? Look, it's never going to be easy, but it's worthwhile. Try to understand that your mental illness is not just affecting you. It's not just causing pain to you. It's causing pain to the people around you that love you and want to support you. And they deserve to get your best, whatever that is. If your best is cooking dinner once a week, do that. But let them know that that is your best and you did try hard. And I assure you, if they love you, if they care for you, they will understand and they will see the effort, and that will give them hope that perhaps things will get a bit better. This topic was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Hey, like, share, subscribe, join the conversation. Tune in to Marriage and Mental Illness. Comes out every Wednesday. That's a discussion between me and my wife about aspects of mental illness and marriage. That's why it's called Marriage and Mental Illness. Have a great week. I will speak to you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Shattered the podcast. I'd like to thank our producer, Meredith Brosnan, our executive producer, Torian Lau, and the band Adelaide for allowing us to use their song as our theme. Go to shatteredthepodcast.com for more information.